Hello, everyone. I'm Governor Jim Justice, and I've got with me, I've got Mark Mukow from our Revenue Department, and I've got our Secretary of Revenue, Dave Hardy, with me as well. And they'll help me through questions that I may stumble on or may not have an accurate answer. So again, I thank you so much for being with us. You know, we've been working this as hard as I know how to work anything. I go back to just this, and I'm not going to go through every play-by-play of the whole thing, but along this journey as your governor, we've had a lot of difficult things that we had to get through. You know, we started off with unbelievable deficits that we had to some way manage our way through them, and we got through them, and we turned those deficits into surpluses, and all of a sudden West Virginia really took off. You know, along the way, we passed a road bond referendum. I may come back to that in a little while, but, you know, our citizens, well, I'll just stay with it just a second, but our citizens stepped up, and they really stepped up. You know, I went out on the road, and a lot of people said, well, you'll never pass this, and it was in multiple times, you know, anything that had ever been tried before. You know, $3 billion worth of potential road work across our state, and the creation of thousands and thousands of instant jobs. It was the very thing that began to jumpstart. Now, with all of that, the citizens of this great state spoke. They spoke while a lot of the naysayers were sitting on the sidelines saying, it'll never pass, it'll never pass. And a lot of the naysayers were legislators at the time, you know, that said, no way it could ever pass. You know, really and true, a lot of people didn't have the guts probably to try it at a number maybe as big as a sixth of what we did. But we did it, and the people spoke. 73% of the vote, they spoke. Now, with all that, they had to sacrifice, did they not? From a standpoint of a license decal or 1% fee on the vehicles or an increase in gasoline tax. All of a sudden, as they spoke, everything started to happen. Everything, from the standpoint of us selling bonds and getting premium dollars, significant premium dollars, in the hundreds of millions of dollars that we were able to pivot around and put it back into the repair of our roads. The people spoke. The people of this great state run this state. And I love them and I listen to them every day. Now, with that, I would just say right now, I want the people to understand just how important it is right now, how important it is that we move, because now is our moment. Now is our moment when everybody is watching West Virginia. I just got through doing three shows on Fox Business, and back on Fox Business. Everybody's calling. Everybody's watching us. From the standpoint of just that, there's so many people that want to leave where they're at, whether they be in Baltimore or Philadelphia or New York City or wherever it may be. They're wanting to move. They're wanting to relocate. They're wanting to move and bring their businesses with them, their employees with them. This is all about just one thing, and that's all there is to it. It's about opportunity. I am trying to make it in every way I possibly can a net positive as far as your paycheck, as far as your take-home dollars. I am trying to make it to where it becomes a positive to you as far as income, everybody across our state. Now, in doing so, the ones that are the very most difficult to get to a positive number are just the ones that don't pay income tax for all practical purposes in the much lower income brackets. But to make it to where it is not negative toward them, I am working really hard in trying to come up with a way to do some kind of tax rebate check. You know, they're only upside down, you know, probably from $100 to $150 or whatever dollars. But $150 to that family is a lot of money. If we could find a way to do a tax rebate check to them, to those families, those 200,000 families out there with incomes like I'm speaking of, and do something along the lines of $200 directly to them. That would get them back net positive. And as we go forward, I would just say just this. As the great people of West Virginia decided and voted on the road bond, the great people of West Virginia stepped up, did they not? They knew they had to sacrifice a little bit to get our roads better and to get us really moving in this state. We turned unbelievable deficits into surpluses, boom, boom, boom. And then all of a sudden along came the cannonball right to our stomach of COVID. And what did we do? You saw my soul. That's what you got to see. You got to see what Jim Justice is all about. The Jim Justice that has taken on project after project, absolutely the most dismal thing in the world. The perfect example that I could tell you is the Greenbrier Hotel. The CSX had been the steward for 100 years. They had put it into bankruptcy. There was food fights going on like crazy between the unions and CSX. Absolutely nobody knew where to turn. But absolutely at the end of the day, I decided to step forward. And when I did, it had no business. The business had been driven away. Absolutely, the place was in a real mess. And what did we do? We turned it around. We gave people that had worked there for decades and decades and generations hope. And now the Greenbrier is on its feet and thriving as it's been for many, many, many years. We brought golf tournaments and we brought football teams and we brought so many different things right there to the Greenbrier Hotel. We have done the same thing throughout all this state. You know, the pandemic, when it hit, we had to manage our health and safety, but we also had to manage the economics, did we not? Through all the briefings, you've been able to see Jim Justice. You've been able to see Jim Justice's soul. You've been able to see the person that is just here to serve. I don't want anything. I've never wanted anything at all. All I want is goodness for you, West Virginia. You're the greatest of the greatest, period. I have no reason whatsoever to tell you anything except the truth beyond the truth. When it really boils right down to it, West Virginia, we have a chance. We have a chance while everybody is watching us. We have a chance to move that will drive absolute opportunity to our state beyond belief. I believe it with all my soul. I believe it. Now, sure, we're going to have to juggle a lot of different balls to be able to get there. We want to do it to where it is absolutely a positive revenue to every single West Virginian in this state. To do that, we've got to have our businesses step up. We've got to have our leaders in our national resources to step up. We have got to have people from the communities of our professionals to step up. We can't put this burden right on the back of our people, especially our people that are suffering the most. But at the end of the day, I do not know a single thing that's going to drive population, drive opportunity, drive property values, not taxes, property values up in this state, drive wages up in this state. Nothing has sex appeal like getting rid of your state income tax. If we can get on that glide path, I promise you, with all in me, and I have not been wrong about too many things throughout my life. I make mistakes just like anybody does. But when I get dialed in like this, I'm dialed in. And I can tell you one more thing, West Virginia, and it's just this. Really and truly, what's the downside? What's the downside, West Virginia? If we do this and we all come together and we just contribute just a little here, a little there, a little here, and everybody ends up net positive by what we've contributed, and at the end of the day, what I would do is cut half the income tax on day one, and then wait. Don't raise any additional tax in any way. Wait and let your growth eradicate the rest of the income tax in West Virginia. And so at the end of the day, if we can be net positive and cut half the income tax out of our system today, and we can do that because of what we have got going on right now, whether it be our surpluses or a little bit a little bit of help that's spread out over all of our peoples. If we can do that, and then we can let growth eradicate the rest of the income tax in the state of West Virginia, you watch and see what happens. People will come from far and near, and they'll come to West Virginia. And when they come, they will bring their businesses, and they will bring goodness to West Virginia. The last thing I'd say is just one thing. Go to Tennessee. The population of this country would have to go through West Virginia to get to Tennessee. Go to Tennessee and just look. The guy that's walking the street, you may go up to him and say, "Sir, did your taxes go up in any different areas? Not net. Did they go up in any different areas?" He'd say, "Yeah, sure they did." He says, "Is that a good thing to you, sir?" And he'd say, "Well, let me tell you something. My wages may have been $40,000, and now I'm making $82,000. Now," he said, "do you think it's been good enough for me?" "You're dadgum right." And then he may turn around and he may have said, "You know, I had my house on the market for $58,000. And now I'm going to sell my house this week for $108,000. So his property values went up. His wages went up. His property values went up way more substantially than maybe what he would have been paying in a smaller different tax. And then you know what he would do? Then he's liable to turn to you and say, "You know what else? When my kids were real little, I took them to Disney World every summer. Every summer we went to Disney World. It was a long drive for me to go to Florida, but we went every year. And now you know what? My grandkids can go right around the block and Dollywood's sitting right there." So in other words, his standard of life has raised. His property values have raised, and his wages have raised. That's what this does for states. That's what this can do for West Virginia too. So I'll take your questions now, and we'll go at it for as long as we can. We'll try to answer just as many questions as we can, and we appreciate you being with us, and we're going to at least try the very best we can to bring you up to speed, you know, and to alleviate a lot of your concerns.
All right, thank you, Governor. The first question today comes from Robert in Flatwoods. He says, "It is fantastic that we are in a tax surplus situation in the great state of West Virginia. Promises were made prior to the election to fix our secondary roads, but according to the DOH Director of Operations, money does not exist to honor that commitment. Would it not be better to honor the existing financial obligation and then examine the status of our tax base?"
Well, Robert, let me tell you this. There's no way that we're not going to continue to work on the roads. You know, let's just tell it like it is again, Robert. These roads didn't get this way on my watch. They got this way because of decades of neglect before I ever got here. But since I've been here, we have made unbelievable progress, have we not? And we're going to continue to do just that. We're going to continue to try to repair and fix every road that has an issue in it until we get them all done. But you can't get them all tomorrow. There's no way. We're going to try in every way to do every new project under the Roads to Prosperity program that we can possibly do. Without any question, that's what we're going to do. We have another bond sale that's coming up. We anticipate another level of premium, and that will help free up a lot of dollars, and that will help in a lot of different ways. You know, Robert, and just stay with me just 1 second. Robert, as we go forward, if Trump were our president today, without any question, we would be on a pathway to a federal infrastructure program. Robert, the Biden administration will do it as well. And when those dovetail in with the dollars that we have in place right now, we will aggressively more and more work on absolutely repairing and building new highways and arteries across all of our state.
All right, the next question comes from Shay in Moorfield. If income taxes are to be removed, but this hurts the state budget, what's the plan to make up that deficit that will not hurt West Virginians?
Well, Shay, it's not going to hurt the state budget. You know, from the standpoint of the services within the state, they will continue. You know, how this whole plan would work from and probably tomorrow, I'll have it to the legislatures, and I hope that they concur and agree that what we've put together is a really good plan. But at the same time, if they have ideas or tweaks or whatever that may make this thing better, I'm open. I'm always open to that. But Robert, but Shay, as we go forward, you've got to know that absolutely I am only in this for this one thing, and that is to try with all in me to make this net positive to you. In other words, I want to cut your income tax enough that that anything that would be raised, you would end up with more dollars in your pocket. And I'm wanting to make that a reality for everybody. Now, if we were able to do that, Shay, and drive all the people that would come to West Virginia, would that not be the home run of home runs? Now, we don't need to go through every little piece of it, but that's the whole deal. That's the strategy of what we're trying to do.
All right, the next question comes from Michelle in Monongalia County. So will sales tax be over 10%? Mathematically, you will have to raise the sales tax to more than 10% to bring in an extra $1 billion. By doing so, that would raise taxes for 60% of West Virginians. So why put the tax burden on low to middle incomes? Why aren't you learning from Kansas? That would leave $1.16 billion to go, which state agencies across the board by 10%, 20%, sometimes even 30%, and eliminating some agencies altogether still leaves another $587 million still to identify. So why put high taxes on us when billionaires like you can afford the taxes?
Well, Michelle, listen, there's no chance on God's earth that the sales tax is going to 10%. No way. No way. I've been an advocate of it going up either 1.5 or 1.9%. No way it's going to 10%. The other thing is, what makes up the hole in the bucket is our natural resource companies, oil and gas and coal, stepping up a little bit. From the standpoint of our professionals stepping up a little bit. From the standpoint of the things that are really kind of hurting us, you know, or not kind of, really hurting us, from the standpoint of tobacco and our soda drinks stepping up just a little bit. From the standpoint maybe of beer and alcohol stepping up just a little bit. From the standpoint beyond that, and I'm trying to think, you know, I forgot. I've forgotten the last area, but nevertheless, you know, when you look at this whole bit of work, it all totals in its entirety with a 1.5 or 1.9% increase in consumer sales tax, and that's what would hit John or John Doe and everything, and asking him to pay more is not fair to him. And absolutely, that's where our business community's got to step up just a little bit. Our natural resources have got to step up just a little bit, and then we can get there. Now, from the standpoint of our professionals out there, you know, it's been brought up just this is, you know, well, we don't really want to do this because that would be a pass-through and all this, and it may. But I think great competition eliminates pass-throughs a lot of times. But the thing that absolutely we've got to think about is just this. If you're running an accounting firm or you're running a law firm and everything, what do you want? Business. You want more and more and more business. You know, if you honestly think that we're going to have more and more and more business in West Virginia, just staying right where we're at, look at this map. Look at this. Please look at this map. There's one little teeny red state. This is from 1950 to 2016. It's the only state in the country that has a net population loss. West Virginia. We're doing absolutely phenomenal today. We've created all kinds of different jobs, and we've got all kinds of goodness that's going on. But Michelle, this would be an easy time for Jim Justice to have gone into the state of the state, done a victory lap, said, look how great everything is, and done nothing else. But you see, that's what I didn't sign on for that. I signed on to really try to do all I could do to help. Right now, if you'll just step back and look at that map and just think, in Alaska, no income tax, they're up 477%. In Texas, 261%. In Wyoming, 102%. In Florida, 643%. Tennessee, 102%. And there we said in West Virginia, 8% down. Look, I am telling you, I know what I'm talking about here. And absolutely, we can make this happen without laying that burden right in the laps of our people that really, are struggling. We can lay this, we can spread this burden out amongst ourselves and go on down the road and make it work to where we go to plateau 1 and then decide if our growth is going to take us on without raising another tax period. Now, I remind you just this. When we ran the road bond referendum, what did we hear all over the place? Oh, I'm not going to vote for that because really and truly, we know what's going to happen. You're going to start down the path and then you're going to have to raise taxes and raise taxes and raise taxes to be able to pay for this. Did we? I told the people we wouldn't raise another tax period, and that's exactly what we've done. I'm telling you, I think our growth will take us to the finish line here without doing anything else whatsoever. And I think for the people that are really struggling the most, what we've got to do is come up with some way to do a rebate check or something like that, and able to get in order to be able to get them, net positive as well.
All right, the next question comes from Joyce in Barbersville. I'd like to know, if you get rid of the personal property tax, when will it take effect?
The personal property tax, did you say?
That's what she said, yes.
Well, first of all, our property tax in the state of West Virginia is, honestly, it's I don't know that it's the best in the country, but it is awfully, awfully, awfully good. Our property in West Virginia is taxed very, very lowly compared to a lot of other states. But from the standpoint, if you meant personal income tax, all this would probably go into effect next January 1, because it's going to have a start date, and it'll probably, everything would be, on hold until January 1, and at that point in time, you'd see immediate reductions or immediate substantial increases in your paychecks, and the things that we put in place, whether it be the natural resource people or it be the tobacco people or whatever, from all that standpoint and everything, all of that would come together at that time.
All right, the next question comes from John in Harrisville. Is the tax on Social Security ending as well?
Absolutely. Doesn't have anything to do with this whatsoever. The tax on Social Security is ending.
The next question comes from Kathleen in St. Albans. I am 200% for state payroll tax removal, but curious where the redirect is. Number one, if not from annual returns, will the income be reinvested in consumables, or what other arena to pay for what our taxes pay for now? Number two, will West Virginia residents still be paying for the taxes in other ways? If so, what is the plan to make up the same money, and from what source?
I'm going to let Secretary Hardy do this one and everything. Rest, just a second myself.
Okay. Generally speaking, the plan, of course, is to reduce the state income tax starting on January 1st of 22 by 50%, which would be putting about over $1 billion in West Virginians' pockets when the state income tax is reduced. You're going to immediately see that in your paycheck, because at that point you're going to have less withholding out of your paycheck, and then the question then becomes, okay, I've gotten the personal income tax reduction. How are we going to keep West Virginia whole and keep things going smoothly? First of all, should be said, the governor has made it clear that we are not going to raise our state budget over the next 3 years. So this year, we have the same exact budget that we had last year. That in itself is a savings because the state budget is $4.569 billion. If it goes up 2%, just 2%, that's $80 million. Actually closer to $90 million. So just by keeping the budget flat, we've picked up $90 million. What the governor's proposing, and of course the plan is not finalized, but it involves sharing a lot of different increases or tax improvements to make the state budget continue to be stable. One, of course, is a consumer sales tax. We have a 6% consumer sales tax. We looked across the country at what other states are using and having their sales tax, particularly the 9 states that don't have a state income tax. And we're looking at a possibility of taking the consumer sales tax, the state consumer sales tax, from 7.5% to 7.5%, or perhaps up to 7.9%, depending on what else that we do. Other questions that we are talking to the legislature about, and the governor's talking to the legislature, is whether or not we're going to expand the consumer sales tax base. In other words, are there certain services that have not been taxed in the past that might be taxed in the future to grow the base of the consumer sales tax? The governor's proposed a luxury tax. This tax, of course, is for items over $5,000, and it starts at as low as 3%, and then it goes up as it moves up the ladder there. It goes from 3% all the way down to 1.5%. It's a one-time tax on luxury items. We're not talking about houses. We're not talking about automobiles. We're talking about luxury items such as jewelry and things of that nature. And that, of course, is a potential way to make up some of the revenue. The governor has asked our fossil fuel industry in West Virginia. We're talking about natural gas. We're talking about oil. We're talking about coal. We've asked them to consider and agree that it would be in the best interest of our state if we tier those severance taxes. In other words, rather than have a flat tax, for example, now we have a flat tax on natural gas of 5% of the sales tax. The tax will go up or down depending on the price of the product, which means as they make more money, they're asked to pay a little bit more with the severance tax rates. As they make money, the tax slides up, and the state of West Virginia and the people of West Virginia have a chance to receive more tax revenue. Other ideas that have been thought about and are being discussed is the cigarette tax. West Virginia has a $1.30 per pack cigarette tax, and there's discussion about raising that tax. The exact amount has not been decided yet, and that's something I think the governor would be talking to the legislature about. Other tobacco products taxes. We have, of course, other tobacco products in West Virginia, such as smokeless tobacco, snuff, things of that nature, and there's a discussion about raising that tax. And then another product that is very controversial are the e-cigarettes. And right now we have a very low tax on the e-cigarettes, and there's discussion about whether we would raise that tax as well. Other issues are soft drinks. West Virginia's had a soft drink tax of 1 penny since 1952. 1 penny. And it's 1 penny per 16.9 fluid ounces of soft drink. And there's been discussion about whether it's time, after almost 70 years, to raise that tax to account for the fact that 1 penny, of course, today isn't nearly what 1 penny was in 1952. And that includes not only the liquid soft drinks that you buy, but the syrup products that are used to make the fountain drinks and the dry mixture that's also used to make soft drinks. So there's a lot of other moving parts in this idea, but the idea is very simple. Give a state income tax immediate, cut the state income tax by 50%, and then go out across all aspects of West Virginia's economy, the business community, consumer sales tax, the luxury tax, soft drinks, cigarettes, perhaps alcohol as well. There's discussion also undergoing about perhaps raising our alcohol tax and bringing that together, and then adding to it the fact that we're projecting an annual revenue growth, a natural revenue growth in our budget of between $60 and $80 million. We're asking the legislature to reduce the state budget by another $25 million. And then we're also taking a hard look at whether we can reduce the state's payroll through attrition and retirements. And every year we look at these numbers. The state's workforce in the general revenue fund, generally we have 5 to 7% of our workforce that separates from their employment. So we're trying to determine whether over the next few years we can pare back the state workforce, and we're projecting that that will also save us about $10 million a year. So when you add all those savings up, the people of West Virginia receive much more in tax relief than they're asked to pay in any other potential taxes. This is a net gain to the people of West Virginia. They're going to receive a lot more in tax relief than they're being asked to pay. So that's a very long, complicated answer, and there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. And of course, the governor's talking to the legislature, and the legislature has to approve whatever's proposed. But it certainly is a roadmap to put more money in West Virginia's pockets.
To me, just one second. Let me just say this, and I want everybody to pay real close attention to me. Anytime you have change on anything, it's difficult. And the first reaction is, I don't want to do that. You know, but the reality is just this. No one can tell me how West Virginia is going to climb out of this and continue to grow. No one can tell me a roadmap. I mean, really and truly, let's just be brutally honest. We passed the right to work law in West Virginia, and we ran to the windows looking to see all the people that were going to come, and they didn't come. We got rid of prevailing wage. We changed our corporate taxes, and we did a lot of different things, and we've run to the windows, and they haven't come. We've absolutely built the field in a lot of different places, thinking build the field and they'll come, and they didn't come. Absolutely, my requirement of this is just this, that we have a net positive to the people, to you, West Virginia, to all of you, to every last one of you. We try with all in us to get you more money than you would happen to pay out. Now, I would encourage you, smoking and soda drinks are not very good for you. You know, but in this, Mark Mukow, who's with us and everything, has done charts. And one of his charts is that continually he plugs in that it's going to cost the average family $80 a year to buy soda drinks if we put this into place. Now, that $80 is this. I mean, can you imagine this? It is 1,600 soda drinks to that family. 1,600. Well, for crying out loud, if that family drinks 1,600 soda drinks, they're going to have a whole lot to worry about way beyond this $80. Now, because that's not good. And from the standpoint that there are people are out there that are saying, well, you know, I work for a soda drink company and everything, and really and truly, is this going to take my job away? And the answer is no way. No way. Do you realize that if we happen to bring 20% and a 20% increase in population to West Virginia, do you think we're going to go down on the number of soda drinks we have in West Virginia? There's no way. There's no way. Do you think really and truly that the people that are driving across the state line for a 5-cent increase in soda drinks, that that many people are going to drive that are going to offset 20% increase in population, or maybe even more? No way. We're going to end up buying more soda drinks in West Virginia. And absolutely, as we go forward, just remember just one thing. Our budget, our number of employees in state government, we've learned a lot through this pandemic. With people working at home and everything, we found out real fast that maybe in some areas of government, all these people, we don't need all these people. And so as people retire, we think we cannot fill that job back. And we can absolutely maintain everything as good or better than it is today. And just think what, Secretary Hardy just said. Our soda drink number has not changed in 70 years, but yet there's a lot of people who are going to push back. We need to have an all-in approach to where, beer consumption bumps up just a little bit. By a little bit, I mean just this. Let's just say today the excise tax on beer is 2 cents. What if we changed it to 6? Or what if we changed it to a dime? How many people would it really impact? What if we changed our liquor thing just a little bit, and we spread that out over the whole thing? And you, all West Virginians, all of you, because it's the only way I'm going to go, if you all have an absolute net positive, that's the way we can achieve this. And we can do it, and then we can sit and wait till our growth takes care of the rest. And when our growth takes care of the rest, you will be doubled down as good. Because the second half of the decrease, you will pay no more tax on anything. I don't know how to explain it any more bluntly than that.
All right, the next question comes from Sarah in Oak Hill. What would you say to Kansas government officials who have warned against this plan, citing their own failed systems? Tennessee and other cited examples also have booming metropolitan areas with high-paying jobs to attract more people. Like West Virginia, Kansas does not have this same advantage. Shouldn't we look to our past failed tax repeal and the failures of other states with similar economic circumstances and provide alternatives to tax repeal to attract more residents and businesses?
Well, we have looked at other states. That's what, that's what's led us down this pathway. But the other thing is just this. Who in the world wants to go to Kansas? I mean, for crying out loud, are you kidding me? I mean, you're going to have to drive through a cornfield 10,000 miles long to get to Kansas. Now West Virginia is situated within a rock's throw of 2/3 of the population of this country. People will have to drive through us to get to a Tennessee. And the other argument is that you make, which is valid, and I'm very respectful of the question in every way, but just think just a second about this. Because we may not have the big metropolitan areas that we're speaking of now, why doesn't that mean we can't get them? I mean, really and truly, I lived in Tennessee 2 different times. One time when I was a little kid, about 3 or 4 years old, we lived in a little town called Monterey, Tennessee. And then when I went to the University of Tennessee, I lived at Knoxville for a little while. And everything. Tennessee's really changed. Tennessee is booming, really booming. And the reason it's booming is just what I'm telling you.
All right, the next question comes from Scott in Morgantown. What impact do you anticipate there will be to higher education institutions? Impacts may include higher tuition costs, lower state funding levels, or others.
Scott, I don't have a crystal ball on everything in the world, but I can tell you this. From the standpoint of higher education, it absolutely should have minimal, if almost no effect whatsoever. It absolutely should, we would hope, that it will end up driving down the cost of tuition. We do not need to get in a situation, nor will I take you there. There's no way on earth that I'm going to take you into a situation to where we have to cut services, we have to raise tuitions at our higher ed and everything else. Remember the guy that you've seen at the briefings over and over and over. Remember, I led off by saying, you've seen my soul. Now, I'm not perfect, and I make plenty of mistakes, but absolutely, there's no way I'm going to take you there.
All right, the next question comes from Wes in Nitro. To me, you seem like a person who acts on well-thought-out plans. As the location leader of the Pepsi facility in Nitro with 100-plus employees, my concern is, what is your plan with people who lose their jobs because of this increase? These are hard-working, tax-paying West Virginians that will become unemployed.
That's not the case. That's not the case at all. I recognize and love the fact that these are hardworking West Virginians that are tax-paying West Virginians, and absolutely, with all in me, I believe your job will just continue right on, if not get better. And the reason it'll get better is just this. If you go back to Toby in Tennessee that I was speaking of earlier, and you just think about him, now he's going to say, you know, I was making $35,000 and now I'm making $82,000. But not only that, he's going to say, and you know what? If I wanted to, I can go right around the corner and I can get 9 more jobs as good as the one I have right now. Because that's the level of demand. That's the whole key to this. The whole key is to raise the demand for labor. Bring more labor here. Absolutely raise the demand. When you raise the demand, you're going to raise the value of your labor. You're going to make more money. You're going to earn more money. That's what we want to achieve. Nothing but just that. We want to give you more opportunities, a better standard of life, and raise your wages. That's what we want to have happen. We don't want to have anything happen like you're describing, where we're going to raise the tax on our soft drinks by 4 or 5 cents, and you're going to lose your job because people are not going to buy soda drinks in West Virginia. That's just not going to happen.
Next question comes from Bill in South Charleston. Won't this plan give an incentive for counties and cities to raise local taxes?
I would surely think not. You know, we have a home rule in West Virginia right now, which counties and cities can add 1%, but I would hope that we will even maybe possibly look at addressing that through the legislature or whatever, but we don't need to do that. We do not need to do that.
Next question comes from James in Charleston. Instead of terminating the state income tax, have you looked into modifying it or upgrading the present West Virginia tax laws? Once you terminate the income tax law, you will be hard-pressed to establish it back onto the books.
Well, I agree with that wholeheartedly, and that's why we're doing it exactly why it was James. Is that correct? You know, James, that's exactly why we're doing it to exactly the way you're talking about. We're cutting half of it out in the beginning. We're going to sit, and we're going to wait, and we're going to let our growth take us the rest of the way. You know, but we're not just, you know, coming out right out of the blocks and saying, well, let's cut $2 billion out of our revenue. We're not doing that.
Next question comes from David in Morgantown. Clearly, we need to find ways to make up the income tax revenue. Is there any consideration to legalizing cannabis and taxing that? We could use the money to help with the budget.
Well, it's an interesting question. And, you know, and I would say everyone needs to hear me really loud and clear on this. You know, I really believe that we have a drug issue within our state today, and I think that we're getting better, you know, but at the same time, I think if you were to layer on recreational marijuana today, I would not be in favor of it. However, you know, there's a good chance that the Biden administration is going to legalize recreational marijuana all across the land. If what we could do within West Virginia, whether they legalize it or don't legalize it and everything, we could get the Republicans and the Democrats and the legislature on board, and they came to me with a plan to legalize marijuana and use the revenue stream as an aid. It will not cover it all by any stretch of the imagination, but use the revenue as an aid to be able to take us there, to eradicate our personal income tax in West Virginia. I'd support it.
Next question comes from Larry in Craigsville. This is not so much a question as a shared experience. I'm a lifetime West Virginia resident and volunteer firefighter with over 40 years of service. I lived in West Virginia and commuted to Virginia for a career as a firefighter, retired in 2004, and moved from the Eastern Panhandle back home in Nicholas County. On retiring, I saw in the tax booklet that firefighter pensions were tax exempt in West Virginia, so I was elated and thought I could return home. I filled out necessary forms and didn't pay taxes on my pension, and 4 years later, I get hit with tax evasion. In a week, contacting my lawyer and finding that since my pension came from out of state, it was not exempt, going to bank to pay off the fees, the state ruined my credit and put a lien on my home. I've made numerous contacts trying to get the law changed to benefit all the firefighters retiring in West Virginia, but nothing has come of it. I promised the West Virginia Tax Department that if I could sell my house, I would leave the state for this reason. I'm excited and thrilled with the prospect of doing away with the state income tax, and this would change everything for me, as I love West Virginia and want to stay here. I feel betrayed with this tax after devoting my life to saving lives and property in West Virginia as a volunteer, and though I am no longer able to actually fight the fires, I serve as a safety officer with my local fire department. Please continue pushing to get this tax eliminated, and I do agree this would be a big step in helping the people that want to stay in this state.
Well, I guess that was more of a statement than a question, but, and it's Larry, is that correct? But Larry, I just follow up by just saying this, thank you so much for all your service. Don't ever forget that all the people that you helped along the way, and a lot of times it becomes thankless in a lot of ways, and I hate like crazy you've been through this, and I hope so much, that everything works out great for you. And again, thanks so much for all you've done and all you're continuing to do for all of us.
The next question comes from Clara in Rosedale. Since Florida has no personal income tax, it is in the Florida state constitution forbids a personal income tax without a constitutional change. Have you looked at how Florida handles the state finances without the revenue source of personal income tax?
No question. We have scrubbed every state in the union. There's 9 other states in the union that don't have a state income tax. And really and truly, that's another reason why we need to move, and we need to move now. We will awaken to a point in time where really and truly we if we don't watch out, we'll be one of the last to get on board. In this situation, really and truly, we could have a real opportunity to drive a lot of folks to this great state and just see how great this state is and our great people. So, but we've scrubbed every single wrinkle about these other states through and through.
Next question comes from Kurt in South Charleston. Will the income tax proposal include any changes to Medicaid?
Absolutely not. No way.
Next question from Jennifer in Hurricane. What time frame would be in place to implement the repeal of the state income tax?
Like Secretary Hardy said a few minutes ago, it will begin next January 1st, 2022.
Next question from Michael in Glendale. We already have a higher sales tax than 4 of the states we share a border with, Virginia, Kentucky, PA, and Maryland. Doesn't raising the sales tax even more put West Virginia's small businesses at a disadvantage, particularly if they are close to the borders of other states with a lower sales tax? Haven't small businesses been under enough of an assault?
Well, I am a real supporter of our small businesses. And the network that they bring us is unprecedented, without any question. Now, but here's the real thing. You have got to have an all-in encompassing program that will drive people that would love to leave Virginia, leave Ohio, and come here and everything. But you got to have a mechanism to be able to get there. Now it's not going to be perfect. It's going to have some little bumps and bruises along the way. But you've got to absolutely realize, West Virginia, that today this map is so profound. It tells us we are having a population decline at a time when really and truly, and I don't say this egotistically at all, but I came in the door, things were really tough. Things are as good as they can possibly be right now. But I want us to continue on this path. Now, we will for a while, but this right here will absolutely put us on a path that will be unbelievable. Now, with all that being said, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. But at the end of the day, we will be so much more attractive than a Pennsylvania and an Ohio or whatever it may be. Their property taxes may be sky high versus ours. Their corporate taxes may be sky high versus ours. I mean, think about this. In the state of Tennessee, they've got 3 layers of taxation. 3 layers of taxation on our businesses there. We have 1. We have 1, and they don't even include the sub-S, LLC, sole proprietorships. They all flow down to the bottom line to the state income tax. Well, if we eliminate the state income tax, just think about how business friendly you are. I mean, it's really something if you can pull it off.
Next question comes from Logan in Charlestown. State income tax is the largest source of revenue for the state. Why is removing it going to lead to economic growth when top economists say it will not? Further, what else could we be doing to attract not just businesses, but also people? Green/clean energy, tech jobs, sustainability projects, minimum wage increases, and the like would accomplish more growth than the removal of the state income tax.
All that's very possible. And all that I would be a proponent of. Go back to the question just 1 second, Jordan. I've missed oh, I know what it is. It's just this. Just think about this. The top ranking economists, they have been telling us what to do in West Virginia for decades, have they not? Ask yourself, has it worked? I mean, we've made reference to these so-called top-ranking economists forever that have basically just told us that we should really know our place. You should know, West Virginia, you can't do anything other than compete with Mississippi on who's going to be dead last, but I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. And that's why we have begun to move like we have in West Virginia. I don't believe all the naysayers that say, oh, you can't pass a road bond referendum. You can't lead the nation in COVID. You can't do this and that for the veterans or the elderly. You can't do all this stuff, West Virginia. There's no way in the world you're going to produce these level of surpluses and be able to do all these different things that we've been able to do. But we've done them. We've done them. We've proved them wrong all over the place and everything. And that's what we need to keep on doing.
Next question comes from Chris in Fairmont. Governor, I am all in favor of your proposal to eliminate the personal income tax and believe it would not only retain our population base, but increase our population and overall tax base for West Virginia. How does your actuary calculate the loss of tax base and time and means to recover that tax base?
Well, I'm going to let Brother Hardy come back to that question, but I'm sure he's going to tell you exactly what, like I would tell you, all the different methodologies. And Dave, you don't need to go back through them all, all the different things that we've got in place to be able to recover those dollars.
Well, I think basically earlier in the meeting tonight, I explained what the plan was, or the general outline of the plan. And of course, Mark Muco, our state economist, and I have spent tremendous amount of time understanding West Virginia's tax base, the history of our tax base, how our economy trends, and what it takes to keep our state budget and our state finances stable. And the plan that I mentioned earlier tonight, the outline of the general plan, recognizes that by taking part of your state personal income tax and then reaching over to other various and sundry other taxes, you can make that work. And then when you build the budget cuts, the flat budget, and the fact that you have natural growth in your budget, 2 to 3%, you can keep the budget stable and still have an overall tax reduction for the people of West Virginia.
All right, the next question comes from Richard in Alderson. You propose applying the sales tax to professional services to help cover the loss of income tax revenue. Does that include doctor, hospital, and drugs? Will you tax an MRI, my doctor visit, and the prescription that I need? Okay,
you've got to answer this, sir.
The answer is a resounding no. No plan to tax any of those medical services that are listed there.
All right, the next question comes from Justin in Morgantown. First, Governor, thank you for reading off the information of the individuals that are lost due to COVID-19. Thank you for shouldering this burden. Please share what our expected GDP growth will be under the new tax model.
Well, I can tell you, I am an optimist at heart, but I'm gonna dial you into really more about Jim Justice. A lot of times I appear to be confident, and I've got to be, and I've got to be bold in the way I think, and I am. But at the same time, if you were to ask Jim Justice what he thinks is his number one virtue, you know what I would tell you? My ability to doubt myself. I question and question and question and question until I'm absolutely certain. Absolutely certain. So with all that and everything, I think really at the end of this day, you know, if we continue down this path that we're on right here, we'll have good stuff happen.
All right, the next question comes from Constance in Elkview. Why not exempt retirees from having their retirement funds taxed?
Dave, maybe you could go again, or
I think with this plan, Governor, if we phase out the state income tax, that's exactly what we're going to do. And I think your tentative plan is to get it done in 3 years, starting off with the 50% cut effective January 1, 22.
All right, the next question comes from Charles in Morgantown. The West Virginia Fund for Law in the Public Interest helps provide legal services to low-income West Virginians. I helped co-found the fund in 1987. For many years, we have depended on tax credits generated by donations to the fund under the Neighborhood Investment Program. Eliminating this tax credit program will be a devastating body blow to charities all over West Virginia, including the fund. Children, victims of domestic violence, the hungry, and so many more of our sisters and brothers will be hurt. What will you do to preserve the Neighborhood Investment Program? Thank you.
Dave, now you got to answer this one because you're an attorney.
I think Charles DeSalvo's brought up some very good points. And what he's talking about is there's a program, as he points out, that's been part of West Virginia for quite some time where you can make contributions to certain type of designated charities, and many of them are mentioned here in the question, and get a tax credit for doing that. Well, that's certainly a great thing, and that's certainly something that I think we need to consider. If we do phase out the income tax, and that's where we're headed, we need to come up with a way to recognize that this tax credit will no longer be valid because we won't be able to do complete with the tax credits that we want to do. So I think Mark Muco also wants to add something to that, but I think that we can work this problem out. And I'm glad Charles has brought this problem to our attention. Mark, do you want to add anything?
First of all, there's nothing in the plan that would eliminate the neighborhood investment tax credit. It's still on the books. The neighborhood investment tax credit applies against both personal income tax and corporation net income tax. We are not getting rid of the corporation net income tax. Basically, corporation net income taxpayers will fund the neighborhood investment program up to its current maximum, and there will be no loss of funding.
All right, the next question comes from Rosemary in Mullins. How do you plan on supporting higher education? We know that education is the way out of poverty. Coal mining is no longer an option.
Well, let me just say just this. You know, when we started down this path, and I give kudos to all the different people that were looking at all the different mechanisms. One of the considerations is, you know, if we could get away from some level of funding, you know, to our state universities and everything, we'd save a lot of money. Well, I'm not a believer there. You see, I think that our state universities, our state colleges as well, I think they're the economic engines that help us run this state in lots and lots of different ways. And so from the standpoint of funding, the funding could come from all kinds of different places. The funding could come from just where we are today, or the funding could come from the next growth that's going to come. You know, absolutely, at least as long as I'm at the helm and everything, we're going to continue to support our higher education, you know, institutions, you know, in every way we possibly can.
The next question comes from Damon and Bell. If you're going to add tax to soda, are you going to take soda off the food stamp program so everyone will pay their part? Because food stamps don't pay any taxes.
Maybe one of y'all can answer that better than me.
That is a federal law question there. That's something that we don't have the ability to. The federal government decides what is on or off of the food stamp program. So we did research it, and that's a federal law issue.
In addition to that, that you're correct. The sales tax does not apply to anything that's purchased with food stamps. However, the soda tax is actually not imposed directly on the final consumer. It's imposed on the wholesaler. So any tax incidents related to the soda tax would be passed on to all consumers of soda beverages, even if you're consuming it with food stamps.
All right, the next question comes from Vanessa in Hurricane. If this goes through, will West Virginia children lose their chance to get a Promise Scholarship? I feel that the Promise Scholarship is very important to West Virginia children. Without this scholarship, I feel less children will be able to go to college, and the ones who do will leave the state. Please don't do away with this very important scholarship.
And this was Vanessa?
Yes.
Well, Vanessa, you've got my word on this one. You know, I absolutely will stand in the way of us getting rid of the Promise Scholarship in every way that I possibly can. There's no way on my watch. I have seen too much goodness, way too much goodness, and the cost is minuscule. And absolutely, I have seen too much goodness in a lot of kids that didn't have any other way to go, and they worked really hard to qualify. There's no way we're going to get rid of the Promise Scholarship.
All right, the next question comes from Deborah in Follinsby. What is the time frame you hope to eliminate the West Virginia tax return? I think it's a great idea and something that is long overdue. Since we neighbor with Pennsylvania and Ohio, we are losing many West Virginia residents to those states. Why? Pennsylvania does not tax pensions, unemployment, or Social Security benefits. Ohio does not tax Social Security. Eliminating West Virginia income tax gives hardworking people more money on payday while making sure that every West Virginia resident is paying in something to the tax system. I say go for it. You have the support of many Brooke County residents.
Well, I thank you a bunch in Brooke County and everything. It's a shout out to y'all in every way. Y'all just keep talking that way and everything. We're going to try every way on this planet to get there, and I could not agree more. We've got just think. You know, I've got two great lawyers that are working with us right here, and I'm not going to mention last names, but Gardner and Berkeley. You know, one of them went to school right here at Charleston Catholic, another one went to school, I think, in Berkeley County and everything. You know what they said just a little while ago? At Charleston Catholic, in Gardner's class, they're all gone. They're all in North Carolina. And Berkeley said, all my class are in Los Angeles, Denver, and North Carolina. We got to stop that, don't we? We got to stop that. We got to give people a real reason to be here. And we can't give people a reason to be here if we don't have jobs and we don't have a standard of living. Like the guy in Tennessee says, I can go right around the block and Dollywood's here. That's what we got to do. We got to do that for all of our children. We've got to give them opportunity. This is the best way that I know to get there.
The next question comes from Rhonda in Charlestown. How do you plan to make up the make up the deficit caused by a 43% cut of the budget?
This was Rhonda, did you say?
Yes.
Okay, Rhonda, we've been through this a bunch of times and everything, and I'm not going to go back through it, again right now. But the net of the whole thing is we've spread out how to do it. We've tried to work it to where everybody will be net positive, meaning they'll bring in more money than they pay back in a tax. And at the end of the day, it's an all-encompassing thing where business and the wealthy and all those, everybody comes together, government, everybody comes together to make it happen.
Next question comes from Jeremy in Harper's Ferry. How does the governor plan to improve our public schools and infrastructure, things that would actually increase the tax base? This plan to remove 43% of government income spells disaster for West Virginia and unfairly and disproportionately impacts the poor and elderly throughout the state.
Well, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm not going to let it disproportionately affect the poor and the elderly. That's one thing we've got to be sure that we backfill here. And the other thing, if you'll just watch, from the day that I walked in the door, I said, we got to do two things in West Virginia for absolute certain. We've got to, first and foremost, we have got to put a stake in the sand that says we're going to make a real life commitment to education. Did I not say that on the first day of the state? And the second thing is just this. We have got to raise our standard of life. And the number two things are schools and roads. And when we forget that, we're really, really messing up.
All right, the next question comes from Teresa in Beckley. You are wanting to raise taxes on tobacco and soda because, quote, those products hurt us, end quote. What about alcohol? And if these products hurt us, why don't you ban them?
Well, I don't know that I have the legal right in any way to ban. And I am guilty as I can be for drinking too many soda drinks. Praise the Lord, I've never smoked a cigarette or done any of the tobacco products. I watched my mom and dad die, and both of them were 2-pack-a-day smokers. You know, I've seen too many people have issues and problems with cigarettes. Now, from the standpoint of the beer or the wine or the alcohol, you know, I'm not a drinker myself. I'm not chastising anybody that enjoys drinks from time to time. That's great. You know, I absolutely just despise thinking about somebody driving an automobile that's drunk. I mean, there's just no excuse for that. So when it all boils right down to it, I'm trying to work it out to where we are going to tax beer, wine, and alcohol as well.
All right, next question comes from Randy in Bridgeport. 1, how do you plan to mitigate the budget shortfall caused by this loss of revenue? 2, one potential plan is to increase sales tax, reinstate the food tax, and create a new tax on services previously untaxed. How will the state mitigate the tax burden on lower income families that previously did not pay income tax, but will now be burdened with the increase in expenses for the same or lesser amount of goods and services?
Well, Randy, we're not going to go down in goods and services. We're going to go up. We're not anyway going to put a food tax on because there's no way. I'll veto it in a second, and I'll have to be overridden over and over and over. And from the standpoint of how we get there, you know, I've been through that over and over. We don't need to go back through it again, but appreciate your question, Randy.
Next question from Gary in Washington. If the tax elimination goes forward, will the plan be phased out and the tax increases phased in?
Both will be done simultaneously. You know, you will phase out a portion of the income tax, half of it. At the same time, that's when you'll phase in the tax increases and everything. You will not pay a tax increase between now and January of 2022. It'll all come together hand in glove.
All right, the last question tonight comes from David in Charlestown. Will eliminating the state income tax bring in more jobs and businesses to our state? What would be the overall impact to the state budget? I fully support this initiative.
Well, David, I thank you for your last question, and that's a good one to end on in my book for me. But, David, I can just tell you this, that the best economists, the best revenue people, the best research that we can have, just look at what's happened to all the other states. Don't absolutely not jump in the pool because of Kansas. For crying out loud, don't just absolutely lockjaw yourself right there because of Kansas. You know, if you'll look at the other states and you'll step back, you'll see growth like you can't imagine. You'll see populations that have increased like you can't imagine. But all of that, if you'll just step back and just think, where's West Virginia today? I don't call Fox. They call me. Absolutely. All the things that are happening all across, when the world comes out and says, if West Virginia were a country in the world, we would be ranked 7th in the world today. West Virginia, right now, the whole spotlight is right on us. You tell me, Randy, you tell me what the growth is going to be. For crying out loud, you know, so many people have looked at this and say, Governor, it's going to be unbelievable. I have call after call after call from out of state, as I've said over and over, call after call that says, you know, do you realize you're going to vacate Baltimore? I mean, just think of the opportunity right here at our fingertips. It's unbelievable, Randy. I appreciate all your questions, West Virginia. I'm going to keep trying to do this as often as I possibly can. We'll let you know when we're going to do it again. We'll answer all your questions, that as many as we can possibly get through and everything. Again, I thank you in every way, and we're going to keep slugging for West Virginia because really and truly, you're worth it. You're so, so worth it. I've always known you were the best. I've always known that. I'll take you back one last second and say one last thing. Years ago, at the Greenbrier, we had a golf tournament there and everything, a big FedEx deal and everything. And at the time, I had no idea about running for governor. The only other office I've ever held is the Board of Education, and very proudly was on the Board of Education in Raleigh County for a little while and everything. But in that, I was at that golf tournament, and I was walking around out there on the fairways and everything. And before I was out on the fairways, I was speaking. They had me on CBS to do an interview with Jim Nance. And you know how they do with the people that are having the sponsor of the golf tournament and everything. They have a 30-second interview and everything. And supposedly it probably makes a lot of people feel good. I dreaded it to death, and I was scared to death when I went on there. But really and truly, Jim Nance and everything, he's talking to me and everything. And I talked about West Virginia, and I talked about how great our people are. Now, I'm out in the fairway walking along, and this man came up to me, and absolutely this is a gospel fact. He grabbed a hold of both of my hands. He said, "Mr. Justice, I'm Bob something," and I can never, ever think of what his last name was. He said, "I'm 87 years old." And about that time, these big tears started running down his face, and he said, "Thank you for making me feel proud of who I am as a West Virginian." Well, really and truly, that's what it's all about. I know how good you are. He knows how good you are. And everything. The world is beginning to see how good we are. Let's bring them here. Absolutely. Let's bring them here right now. Thanks so much, West Virginia. I'll keep it up, and we'll keep trying until we get there or we don't, one way or the other. Thank you so much.